if you listen to that verse that Ronald was reading, Nathaniel made a comment about Jesus when he was told that by his brother and friend that they found Jesus in Nazareth, of whom the Bible spoke. And he focused on the city where Jesus came from, Nazareth, and did not think of all the other things that the friends told him. He just focused on the city of Nazareth, which was well known for being a city that was bad. So he said, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? He jumped to conclusion by filtering out all the other things. So today we're going to talk about mental filtering, focusing on one aspect of something. Now you have a sheet in your hand, I hope. There will be some blanks to fill in, some words. There are a few typographical errors, but I hope you just overlook them. And if you fill in the words, you will get a good summary of this talk. Some weeks ago, I told you that at Sungai Ara, we're going to give a whole series on how to think correctly. And if you can think correctly, you will communicate correctly. In James chapter 3, you will read about how the tongue can be such a small member and yet can set fire to a lot of things and can destroy a lot of stuff. So if you do not speak correctly, if you do not communicate well, you can do a lot of damage. But before you can even speak, you have to have a thought. So the thoughts are even more important. If you can think correctly, you will be able to speak correctly. So we're going to talk about how to clean our mental filters so that what comes out is clean, what comes out is good, and you can communicate well. There is a name, Bethany. She was a lady who was working for a company, and the company president asked her to give a talk. And so she did. But before the talk, she prepared herself. She bought a nice dress. She made sure her hair was all in place. The makeup was nice. And she practiced her speech. So on the day of the talk, she gave a presentation. It was very well done. Many people came up to her and congratulated her. She was feeling pretty pleased until she went home and looked at herself in the mirror, turned around, and she saw a sales tag on her new dress. She had forgotten to take off that sales tag. And she was so upset. She said, people must have been snickering, laughing at me quietly while I was giving the talk. As I turned and they saw the sales tag, So her whole day, the rest of the day, she was miserable because she focused on that sales tag and forgot all about the good comments about the talk. There was another gentleman by the name of Troy. He was a young man who was playing trumpet at his school. And every year there is an audition of all the members of the band to see who could be placed in the first chair, second chair, third chair. Those of you who know about orchestras or bands, the best player usually sits in the first chair, nearest the audience. And then those who are not so good sit towards the back. So Troy went through his audition, and the bandmaster said, Troy, you're such a good player. I'm sure you're going to be a star in trumpet playing. And so Troy thought, oh, I'm going to get first chair. Very pleased with that. But the bandmaster went on and said, you know, I am going to have another young man be the first chair. He's more senior to you. And Troy felt so bad. He had set all his hopes on being the first chair. And he went home and complained to his mother and said that he was not a very good player. The teacher or the bandmaster just said pleasant things to him, but he was really not first chair material. He was very upset. Another story, Mary was in heavy traffic or trying to get into the heavy traffic from a side road. And just like Penang, we are very familiar with that kind of a thing. Getting out of the church too, getting out to Burma Road. Very heavy traffic. And she was getting frustrated, but a nice man, the driver of another car in the heavy traffic, stopped and waved her to go into the traffic. Oh, she was very pleased. There's a nice driver there helping me. But soon after she got out, there came a motorcycle zooming by and almost hit her. She had to jam on the brakes, and she got so angry. Road rage. She said the people on this road are terrible. They're all bad. This is a city where all the drivers are nasty. She forgot about the nice man that led her into the traffic. So if you look at this type of thinking, you will find that people tend to filter out good things and focus on bad things. Some of you may have bosses who have told you to present your plans for the future of the company, of your workplace. You're maybe the supervisor, and the boss looks through what you have prepared and says, it's all very good, but can you change a little bit here? Can you change a little bit there? And then you go away thinking, he's very critical. I didn't do a good job. He doesn't like my work. You might find a student who is taking a test. You might be that student, and you run out of time, and you did not finish the test. And you get so upset that every test in the future, you are going to be very sure that you check the time. And so you start checking the time, so much so that you get distracted and waste a lot of time checking the time because of that one test where you did not finish on time. Coming to biblical things, there are people who filter biblical subjects. One of the subjects that people try to get out of the Bible is that drinking wine, alcoholic beverage is okay. If you look at the one text, Deuteronomy 14:26, and use that as the reason for drinking a strong drink, you might say that's a correct concept. Because in Deuteronomy 14:26, there is advice from God through His prophet that when you come together for Passover or some of those feasts, you buy food and you buy strong drink. Oh, then you say, well, how come we teach that it's wrong to drink strong drink or alcoholic beverage? There are so many other texts that talk about alcoholic beverage. For example, Proverbs 21, 23, 29 to 33 tells you about the evils of alcoholic drinks. And then there's a curse for someone who encourages drinking strong drink, Habakkuk 2:15. And then there's the text in 1 Corinthians 10:31 that says, do everything to the glory of God. Whatever you eat or drink even. So if you put all these together with Deuteronomy 14:26, what should be the conclusion? It might be that I'm confused. How come one text says to go and buy strong drink and the rest says strong drink is bad? I'm confused. The Bible should not contradict itself. But perhaps you can get some help by looking at other subjects. How many people would say the Bible teaches that it's okay to have slaves? How many people? If I ask you, the Bible teaches that it's okay to drink strong drink, maybe I can see people raise their hands, or they can say in their heart, yes. But when it comes to slavery, how many people will even say yes in their hearts? The Bible teaches slavery. And yet, if you look at the issue of slavery, there's no text in the Bible that says slavery is bad. None. But there are texts which says it's okay to have slaves. Exodus 21:16, 20, Ephesians 6:9, Colossians 4:1. All these talk about how to treat your slaves. It doesn't say don't have slaves. It says how do you treat your slaves. And even in the book of Philemon that Paul wrote, he told Philemon, your slave ran away. He's become a Christian. When he comes back, give him freedom. Did Paul say that? No. He said, when he comes back, treat him nicely, but still have him as your slave. So you say, wow, so it's okay to have slaves. Now, I just read in the internet not so long ago that there are slaves today. There are people trying to flee Africa. They pay money, and those who are supposed to smuggle them out of Africa to Europe instead make them slaves because they run out of money, and these people who are these smugglers say, you can't pay me, so you owe me so much, I'm going to sell you as a slave to pay for the fee that you owe me. And they're sold, some as cheap as $500. I saw that. So you say, oh, it's okay because in the Bible, there's no mention that you cannot have slaves. But most of us will say, no, that's not true. Now, how about divorce? I know I'm a divorced person. Christ says, don't get divorced. And then the people who was talking to Christ said, if you cannot get divorced, why did Moses tell the Israelites that they could write a bill of divorce and then they're divorced? You see, before, Moses was told to give that rule. If you want to divorce, you must write out a certificate, no? So that your wife is properly divorced, officially divorced. Before that, the Hebrew people could just say, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you 3 times. It was so easy that Moses was told, make it a bit harder. They have to officially write a letter, a bill of divorce. So Moses was improving on the problem. And Christ said, it's out of the hardness of your heart that Moses was told to allow that. So, if you look at these topics, what do you want to filter in or filter out to help you make a decision on what's right? Perhaps Acts 17:30 would help. And the times of this ignorance got winked at, but now commandeth all men everywhere to repent. See, God knows human beings. And sometimes He allows things because the people are not ready. It's not present truth. For example, there's another topic that I didn't put on the slide, which is multiple wives. King David, King Saul, King Solomon, most of the kings, they had multiple wives. Were there prophets that could have gone to the kings and told them, hey, divorce all your other wives and just have one. That's what Seventh-day Adventists did to the Africans. When they went to preach in Africa, they saw that a lot of the African chiefs had multiple wives. So they told the African chiefs, you must get all the wives, divorce all the wives except one. But after you divorce, you must still take care of them. Take care of your children through them. You do not give up your responsibility, but you must honor them as ex-wives and make sure that their welfare is good. Now, the prophet could have come to King David, King Saul, and Solomon, but we are not told that there were any prophets who came with that message to the kings. Why not? Nathan came to King David and told him, you have committed adultery. Not directly, but indirectly. You have committed murder. And David was very, very repentant. He gave up. He confessed and wrote some psalms after his confession. But why not about multiple wives? I think in those times it was God winking. David was fighting more serious problems. I wouldn't say more serious. He was fighting too many problems. Murder, adultery. His son was murdering a brother. Another son was raping a daughter. Whoa, huge problems, you know. And so God did not impose another truth on King David to handle. It wasn't present truth. So God winked at that. I think that drinking alcohol is the same. Today we have so much information that tells us drinking is bad. It's not only Proverbs, Habakkuk, and what other text did I mention? 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians is a good text now. But it tells us that today, with so much information, it's not good to drink alcohol. And those people say, oh, Harvard study says drinking red wine, you get fewer heart attacks. But they don't tell us that more research has found out that resveratrol, an antioxidant in the red wine from the skin of the red grape, is the one that helps protect you from heart attacks, not the alcohol in the red wine. And you can get the resveratrol just as much, if not more, from drinking fresh red grape juice. So the alcohol actually is detrimental. Resveratrol is good. So with the information we have today, it is not true that we should drink alcoholic beverage. So that's how I make up my mind. I review all the information, then I come to a conclusion without neglecting important information. And then I make a better decision. So that's how mental filtering should be. Take into account all the information and not just select one little fact that you like, that meets your lifestyle, and then go and do it. Okay. All right. We all filter new information through old perceptions. There was Galilei, known as the father of modern science today. But when he first started his career, he was known as a heretic and threatened with imprisonment and death by the scientists of his day. Because the scientists of his day were also church people. And they believed that the earth was the center of the universe and the sun rotated around the earth. And if you ask any normal person here, you know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Isn't that the sun moving around the earth? Of course. That's the only way to think, if you don't have all the other scientific evidence. But Galileo was measuring the movement of the stars and so on, and he became convinced that the earth, with its changing seasons, was moving around the sun rather than the sun around the earth, and that the world was actually turning on its axis, rotating, that gave the impression that the sun was moving. It's actually the earth moving. But any normal person would say, I can't feel the earth moving. Can you feel the earth moving? It's actually moving at like 2,000 miles per hour. You know. So, no, 1,000 miles per hour. Because it's 24 hours. The earth is about 20-some thousand miles in circumference. So the senses, the eyes, the body cannot feel the earth is turning, but it tells us the sun is moving. And so Galileo was condemned that he was going against the Bible, that the earth is where God will set up his throne, and so it must be the center of the universe. And he was asked to recant, give up that unholy idea. To save his life, he recanted. But that idea was scientific. Further study proved that it was correct. And today, he's not known as a heretic. He was not killed. And he's known as the father of modern science. There were also some ancient people who ignored information and got into trouble. One of the first was Eve. She could recite what God said. She added a little bit. But when the serpent asked her, what did God say? She said, God said we should not eat of the fruit. And the day we eat, we will die. But she added, no, we should not even touch it. And Satan took that opportunity. The snake touched the fruit, ate it. And said, if you eat it, you'll be like God himself. And so she's focused on, wow, I can be like God, deciding what's right, what's wrong. So the snake did not die. So she filtered in the information that she liked. She filtered out the information she did not like, and she took the fruit. And look where we are today. We're not in heaven. Very serious consequences. How about Noah? During his time, if you look at the book of Genesis, chapter 8, 9, and so on, I believe it talks about Noah there. His countrymen never saw rain or flood before. So when they heard that rain was coming, they said, what is rain? What's flood? They didn't have that information yet. But Noah tried to tell them. He built that boat. For 120 years, his message did not get across. And a lot of them perished. Samson, he wanted a Philistine girl. Where were all the pretty girls in Israel? I don't know. But he had only eyes for the pretty girls in Philistia. Nathaniel, we discussed that. He said, can any good come out of Nazareth? All these are examples of mental filtering. Now, to filter good is all right, but when you filter negative, to allow negative to come through, that's a problem. If you have a negative outlook, you will fear to develop or propose new ideas. Because you can say, oh, people will not like the idea, it'll be rejected, it sounds absurd, I will be held up to ridicule, and so better don't rock the boat. It chokes back creativity as a result. And it promotes prejudices. That kind of person Chinese are always like that, Indians are always like that, Malays are always like that, you know. And so prejudices are encouraged. Also, if you have negative filter, you can look at all the past problems and miss opportunities to progress. It can be even living in the past glories, success, like Kodak. What happened to Kodak? Today, can you buy Kodak film? Maybe on the internet, very expensive, because there's so little left. Hardly anybody is using Kodak film. So it's now a prized item for those few people who own cameras that still can use Kodak film. But it rested on its success, didn't look forward, and got run over by the industry. And you look at Swiss watches. Supposedly, Japanese, somebody, I'm not sure it's Japanese, went to Switzerland and told them to make digital watches. They say, oh, it doesn't take skill. It's workmanship. Swiss watches are famous for workmanship and skill. This is such a cheap thing. And the Japanese took it up. And today, more digital watches are sold than the wind-up watches. True, you can still make a business out of it. You can still make money, but you don't dominate the market like you used to. The Swiss watches are not dominating. Okay, so there is problems using negative filter and occasionally even the positive filter. The negative filter also damages personal relationships. For example, a teacher may have a pet, or the boss may have a favorite, seen as infallible, and others begin to resent that. Teachers' pets are not very welcome. We had a gentleman by the name of Ralph. I might have told you in some other time when I talked to you. Every time there was a question being asked in our medical school class, Ralph would put up his hand and give the right answer. And so after a few months of our first year in medical school, every time we had a lecture, whenever the lecturer asked a question, the whole class would say, Ralph, Ralph, Ralph. It was a chorus of Ralph. Not that he was a bad boy, he always gave the right answer, but we couldn't stand him. He was giving too many right answers, and we thought he was showing off and always putting up his hand. So we didn't like him. He was not the teacher's pet. He was just a bright guy, you know. But he was not number one. He was like number two in our class. But he was the one that kept putting up his hand. The number one guy never put up his hand even once. He was a 2-year college student. He didn't comb his hair. It was long. And he wore jeans and slippers. But he was number one. So we didn't bother him at all. If you look at scapegoats, it started in Israel, right? The scapegoat. All the sins that were confessed were put on the head of the scapegoat, took the blame. Sometimes we're human scapegoats. We put the blame on people who should not bear all the blame. And we damage a relationship there. And then in romantic relationships, love is blind. We begin to put filters around the person that we love, and this person is so angelic, so heroic, if it's a man, cannot do wrong. And even when they do wrong, we excuse the person because we are in love. So when you are in the in love situation, watch out. Your mental filters are working the wrong way many times. When you finally get married, you find that this person has changed. They're no longer heroic, no longer angelic, but actually it's our perceptions that have changed. Our mental filters have changed. Now we are adding in the other information. Oh, this person is so untidy. this person has a strange smell, or he doesn't brush his teeth, I don't want to kiss anymore. So all the other information starts coming in, and we say, oh, this person is not like what I'm married, but it's your perception that has changed. Persons do not change so easily. Perceptions change very easily. And if that's so, we can change our perceptions. That's the good news. We can change ourselves by the power of God if we want to. Mental filtering is part of our brain's protective function. The healthy use of it keeps us safe, but overuse keeps us in a state of alarm. That's the negative way of using the mental filter. In such a case, we produce adrenaline hormone, which readies our body for fighting or fleeing. So if you filter out good and have negative information that floods your mind, you'll be at a high level of anxiety. And the adrenaline that comes out raises your blood pressure, increases your heartbeat, slows your digestion down, because it will take the blood from your stomach to your muscles, so that your muscles are more ready for action, and so you do not digest so well. So a high-stressed life will keep the body's alarm system going on off many times during the day. It will lead to high blood pressure, poorer immune system, and difficult digestion. There is a high cost to this kind of a pessimistic filter. There's greater risk of depression, impaired immune system, increased risk of dying younger, increased risk of death by accident, more likely to have heart disease, flu, and other sicknesses, spend more on medical and mental health problems, you visit the doctors more often, more likely you'll be inactive because you don't want to do things that could be dangerous, less in overall physical and mental health. So there is a high cost of a pessimistic filter. Negative thinking is dangerous, more dangerous to you than some of the things you are fearful of. So the overall effect of pessimism, in Netherlands it was researched that 40 people with the highest optimism were 45% less likely to die of all causes than those with the highest level of pessimism. So it's not good to be pessimistic in outlook. What we need is a balanced, realistic optimism. For example, if you're going to the airport and you're late, the traffic is heavy, the one who is pessimistic will say, I will miss my flight for sure. And no need to hurry or get into an accident. Might as well buy a new ticket. So that is a pessimistic outlook. The one who is optimistic purely will say, oh, I can drive fast. I don't think the traffic will be so bad further on. At that time, maybe there's no Waze, but if you got Waze, you can see how bad the traffic is. In fact, a purely optimistic person might say, I may have time to top up my petrol tank on the way to the airport because my tank is running low. But a realistic optimist would say, I will be able to make my flight on time if the traffic does not come to a standstill, and I will top up my petrol tank only on the way back from the airport. That would be a realistic optimist. And that's what we should be. Realistic optimists believe Murphy's Law. How many of you Murphy's Law? Have heard? Murphy's Law. Anything bad that will happen can happen. Okay? And Mrs. Murphy's Law, how many know? Anything bad that can happen will happen when Mr. Murphy is not around. Okay. So a realistic optimist believes anything may happen, but they also think that they can overcome the problems as the problems come. They are more accurate in their assessment of problems than their less accurate counterparts, the overly optimistic or the overly pessimistic. So, realistic optimists can roll out of bed each morning and face the day with their mental, emotional operating systems completely clear of prejudices, negative memories, or other mental errors. And a realistic optimist can avoid judgmental clutter when analyzing information each day. They can plan their days with clarity and confidence. They can look at people close to them not as they are, but as what they could become. And somebody told me that the strength of Ronald Cole, our CEO at PH, is this last one. That he's been able to motivate people, which did not seem very motivated in the past. So what's the power of positive filters? See, our senses are exposed to more than 1 trillion bits of information per second. How many of you have computers that work that fast? Our brain is the best computer there is. So we need our mental filters to automatically allow only important information into our consciousness. Otherwise, we would be too distracted. There was Dr. Barnett at Walla Walla College when I was going through college there. He gave a talk, and during his talk he said that there is a thing called eidetic memory, E-I-D-E-T-I-C. In our common language, it's called photographic memory. So the person can read something once and remember every detail. No need to go through it again. And many people say, I wish I could do that. Then he says, there was a young man who had this kind of a memory, but he could never come to a decision on anything. It was very difficult because every time he thought of doing something, all the memories of everything that was involved in that decision came flooding in. And he could not separate what was good from what was bad. He became paralyzed. Remembered too much. Because he could not filter out the information. He could not categorize them. So we need to have mental filters that work. You don't have to have eidetic memory, but you can choose to remember things that are important. And that's what I have done. So I've forgotten all my mathematics. I've forgotten my chemistry. I don't need it. I'm filtering them all out. But you need to have the wisdom and the judgment to know what to filter out. And the frontal lobe of your brain can do that if you allow it. Each event we experience or decision we make pass through the mental filter of our beliefs, values, and expectations, making up our daily reality. And this set of ability is found in your frontal lobe. That's why in our talks at Sungai Ara, it will finally hit upon how to nourish your brain so it can work at its maximum efficiency. We'll talk about that in about 3 weeks' time. If our mental filter lets in negative things only, our life will be truly depressing. If it lets in realistic, positive things, our life is happier. God is an expert at realistic, positive filtering because he looks at what people may become instead of what they are. Joseph gives us an example of how to filter things. He became his master's chief of staff, even when he was a slave. And when he was thrown to prison, not because of his own doing, but because he stood up for the right, he became a prison supervisor. So you give him something negative, he turns it around to positive. Some Chinese think that they are like that. You give us a law that suppresses us, we'll turn it around. Anyway, whatever law you have, we can make it work. So that's a positive filter. When his brothers, when he was forgotten by the king's butler to recommend him to the king, he bided his time, and in time he became number 2 in Egypt. Then when he was number 2 in Egypt, his brothers came for food, knelt before him. He forgave them, attributing to God's providence his experience of his negative experience. He said, you meant what you did for evil, but God meant it for good. So Joseph chose to look at life through the mental filter of God's big overall plan for his good in his life. Paul and Silas amazed their captors by singing hymns after being beaten and locked up in stocks. So that's how Christian martyrs encourage others on the way to a public execution. They all learned from Jesus, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, Hebrews 12:2, and went peacefully to his death. So Jesus looked through the mental filter of the Bible. Isaiah 53 is a great chapter on the work of Christ and on his attitude. He frequently quoted scripture. He could undergo insult, rejection, and torture, loving the unlovable and forgiving his murderers because of looking at things through a mental filter in harmony with scripture and God's will for his life. That's the person we have for our example. So the positive, healthy mental filter of Joseph, Paul, and Silas, and Jesus is available to each of us right now. We just have to make the decision in our mind. Bad things will still happen to good people, but they will be easier to bear with the proper mental filter. Will you choose to have it? What is there to lose if you choose that type of a mental filter to have? So what's the strategies for success? The Bible gives us a strategy in Philippians 4:8. It is the whatsoever things. There are 7 of them. To think on these things. Things that are true, honorable, pure, lovely, excellent, admirable, worthy of praise. So that's a text that is very valuable for the correct mental filter. What are some of the practical things we can do besides? Think of the question, am I overlooking any positive aspect of this situation? Number 2, am I engaged in too many activities that dwell on the negative? Number 3, replace the negative thought with a positive. Your brain will then release neurotransmitters that make you feel better. You see, your brain can only think of one thought at a time. How many times I've been counting, and people try to talk to me, I tell them, don't talk to me. I'm counting. I can't even say, don't talk to me. I just wave them away, because I'm counting. So if you change your negative thought to a positive one, you don't even have to tell the negative one to get out. It's automatically gotten out. You can think of only one thing at a time. So substitute a positive thought for a negative thought. Quote a Bible text. And when you're trying to quote the Bible text, all thoughts will go away. Only the Bible text will remain in your mind. There is a 14-day plan to improve thoughts. Now, you may think it's a very tough plan, and I think it's very tough. I haven't tried it yet. But Neil Nedley has people who go to his institute to learn to recover from depression, and he finds that those people who use this 14-day plan really improve. He got a letter from a patient who said her first 20 years of marriage was like hell because she was the devil. She criticized her husband, she criticized her children. They didn't know what to do with her. But when she put into practice the 14-day plan, which was very difficult, but when she kept at it, she said, suddenly it clicked. And she became a new person. And she said she looked forward to the next 20 years. So what's the plan? For 2 weeks, consecutive 14 days, say nothing critical or negative about anything or any person. Now it's in your notes, so you can take it home if you want to try it. Number 2, not one critical word is allowed to be spoken to others, not even constructive criticism. So don't try that. Don't try constructive criticism. No criticism at all, okay? Speak to others using positive or neutral words, or speak nothing at all. The same for our thoughts. Now that's a difficult one. Number 4, if you slip up on any day during the 2 weeks, you begin counting again from number 1 for the 14 days. Don't get discouraged if you have to start over. Things will get easier as you become more aware of your thoughts. After completing 14 consecutive days, constructive criticism is allowed, and you will be a far better judge of what that really means. How about leaders, bosses? Can you not scold your underlings who are not doing the right thing? Well, it is possible to communicate expectations and enforce consequences without critical words. I expect this project to be finished on such and such a date. If not, I will have to deduct 1 week's pay from you. Is that criticism? No. If you enforce it, is that criticism? No. So, you can apply this 14 days even to bosses and leaders, and they can learn not to be critical. Okay. So, I hope that you and I can put some of these information to work in our lives. Because if we do, life will look better through our realistic, optimistic filter. May God help us to